It is weird sometimes to focus a lot on sports video games because a lot of people look down on the genre of games. Basically, it's something that you can do outside, so why would you sit with a controller in your hand and play? Nevertheless, probably because of my lack of athletic ability, I have been a fan of sports video games for years. And there are some sports that are very well represented in the video game format. Football video games, of course, between Madden and NFL 2K and NFL Game Day and NFL Blitz. We have a wide range of football video games, including one where you can play with a bunch of dogs. We opened up Jerry Rice's Dog Football, for example. So football is well represented. Basketball is too. NBA Jam, perhaps my favorite arcade video game of all time, sports or otherwise. That represents basketball in an arcade fashion. NBA 2K is on the other end of the spectrum in terms of simulation. We have NBA Live, we have NBA Shootout, we have NBA Courtside with Kobe Bryant. So basketball is well represented. Plus, we're not even talking about college, which is a whole other side of the basketball genre. So we have basketball, we have football, college, of course, and football too. Hockey is pretty well represented, although less so in recent years because EA is pretty much the de facto hockey video game company now. But before that, when we're talking about retro game circles, we have Blades of Steel, and we have ice hockey, for the NES, and we have Stanley Cup, and we have Tecmo Super Hockey for the Genesis, and we have NHL Face-Off, and we have NHL Blades of Steel, and we have just other hockey games that are out there. We opened up NHL Power Play on this show not too long ago. Baseball is well represented through MLB The Show or Sony's MLB series or World Series Baseball for the Genesis and for the Dreamcast. Or RBI baseball, although it pains me to talk about RBI baseball today because the games are just pretty terrible, but that's a story for a whole nother video down the line. But what's interesting is while baseball is well represented, softball, which is very similar to baseball and very popular, whether it's rec league softball with a bunch of guys playing after work or whether it's collegiate softball or even professional softball with women playing in fast pitch, which is just crazy stuff. We don't see a lot of softball video games. In fact, there's only one that comes to mind when I'm making this video, and that is Dusty Diamond's All-Star Softball for the NES from Rotorbund. That game is kind of out there, a little bit strange with its different part configurations and the way you pick teams and things. But still, at least it's a softball game. You could play fast pitch or slow pitch, and you could hit the ball out of the park, or you had different rules depending on the different park that you played in. But that's the only softball game that really comes to mind. Well, that one, and I can't believe I'm opening this. That one in this game that I'm about to open in this episode of Unsealed. I present to you Sammy Sosa Softball Slam. Developed and published by 3DO for the PlayStation, I believe this is in 2000. This game, I'm just going to level with you, it is not great. It is not good. It probably isn't even average. I'll show you the screenshots in a little bit. But some background first. 3DO and Sammy Sosa had a working agreement. Sammy was the cover athlete for 3DO's High Heat Baseball series. I opened, actually, I think one or two of those games on this show in the past. And that was during the late PlayStation era and very early in the PlayStation 2 era. So they had a contract with Sammy already. So somebody at 3DO thought it would be a good idea to make a softball game featuring Sammy on the cover, and you can see the caricature of Sammy looking goofy, and that is pretty much the format for the rest of the game. This is a very goofy softball game that does not take itself seriously, and that in and of itself is not the problem. The problem is that the graphics are pretty terrible. There's an over-the-top announcer that thinks he's straight out of NBA Jam. He thinks he's some kind of Tim Kitzrow-alike, and it's just not. And the gameplay just isn't very good. But I digress for just a minute because we're going to take a look at the back of the case, and we do see what some of the screenshots look like. And I hate to say it, but the stills don't do the game justice. If you take a look at gameplay videos on YouTube, you will see what I mean. But let's take a look at some of the features anyway. Sorry about hitting the microphone there. So Sammy Sosa Softball Slam, because you got to have Sammy Sosa in the title. brings the ultra-popular game of softball, so ultra-popular, in fact, that there's only been 2 major games, to the PlayStation game console for the first time for an entirely new game experience. Okay, I'm listening. Step up to the plate for fast-paced gameplay as you knock out doubles and triples. All this over-the-top action comes screaming at you through a non-stop barrage of dynamic camera cuts combined with sizzling special effects, side-splitting animation, and a bombastic announcer guaranteed to keep you on your toes and wanting more. So it is obvious here, taking a look at this capsulated description of the game, that 3DO is going more toward the arcade side, almost like an MLB Slugfest type, where it was definitely more arcade style than it was simulation, which makes sense given softball probably appealing toward the more casual audience, which again is too bad because you do have professional softball players and collegiate softball players. You could make a serious softball game if you really wanted to. Features include single game for 1 or 2 players simultaneously and tournament play for up to 8 players, 24 male, female, and co-ed teams featuring customized players, teams, and leagues, 3 difficulty settings plus automated family mode for all ages and skill levels. There are 6 different playing fields to choose from, superior control, boy I'd put that in quotes, over hits, pitches, and fielding. This is rated E for comic mischief, and mischief this game does provide. Unfortunately, not all of this mischief is positive. What I will say about this game before I open it up is that it is nice to have another softball game. If you like playing softball, again, more the recreational variety, you might find something to like about this game, but when you see it played and when you play it for yourself, don't expect too much because the game really does not deliver on a high level, unlike High Heat Baseball, which is far more impressive and, in my opinion, more fun to play. All right, that being said, let's go ahead and try and get this guy open so that we can take a look at the game and the instruction manual. So there we go, trying to pull this off. And as I record this video, we're getting ready for another in a series of massive windstorms here in southern New England. They're saying we may get to 60 miles an hour tomorrow, so I'm trying to get this filmed and uploaded before we lose power. Hopefully we don't, but you never know. So there is the wrapping. We see the Sammy Sosa Softball Slam sticker at the top that we're going to go ahead and take off. And then we'll take a look at what is inside the case. This is regarded by many as one of the worst sports video games out there. Whether it deserves that kind of moniker is questionable, but let's not beat around the bush. This game is not going to win any awards, which again is too bad considering that it represents a sport that does not have a lot of representation in video game circles. When we open up the case, we do have the Sammy Sosa Softball Slam disc with that field green grass cover there, and we have an ad for Vegas Games 2000, a rather nondescript casino experience for the PlayStation. Let's go ahead and take the instruction manual out, if we can do that, because of course this is going to give me issues, right? You know, PlayStation games are great, except for sometimes when you can't get the manual out. There we go. When we take a look at the manual is in black and white. It is not in color, which by this time in the PlayStation's life cycle is not very surprising. So you can see kind of like what the menu system looks like. And again, you got that caricature look, that over-the-top character look for the character models. Have all of your play controls right here, and it really doesn't take much to understand how the game is played and to learn the controls. That is a plus for the game, I will give it that. You can play a single game where you choose a team, men's league, women's league, and co-ed, so you can certainly differentiate between them. You can configure players, you can set up the game difficulty, so you do have some various options there to play with, including day or a night game. One has 6 different ballparks. You can set the innings in a game. The standard number is 7. You can have a 1-and-1 count. That's interesting. Set this option on for faster gameplay. This rule means that each batter comes up to bat with 1 ball and 1 strike against him already, or her already. That's kind of interesting. There's a mercy rule. There's a mercy rule here. Say that 3 times fast as well, which is good once you learn the ins and outs of the game and you start just beating opponents into submission. You can make substitutions. That's all well and good. Player ratings, position changes, configuring team settings where you can set the computer to handle pitching, hitting, fielding, throwing, running. The throwing style experience between a 1-button and 2-button, batting camera, fielding camera. So at least, as I said, there's a variety of options to be customized for your ideal softball experience, provided you can get that out of this game. Shows you how to play offense, talking about the count, the wind indicator. If you've played any baseball video game before, softball is not that much different. You will understand it pretty quickly. The Softball Slam game tip here: don't swing at every pitch. Learn to work the count by swinging only at pitches in the strike zone. In other words, don't swing at balls, and keep in mind that a pitcher almost never throws a strike on a 1-2 count. Okay, that's more baseball than softball. I think there are a lot of strikes in softball, but that's just me. There is a 3DO warranty card you can register and win free stuff, which you can't do anymore because 3DO is no longer a thing, but that is there in the front if you care about it. How to play defense, adjusting your outfield alignment. That's almost a little too much for an arcade softball/baseball game, but okay. Shows you how to field, talking about the pause menu, game wrap-up, so it goes over some statistics, which are my favorite thing about these games. You can play a tournament, which is nice. For all the excitement of a softball tournament, select tournament using the navigation title. You can set up a tournament. Does it say how many? 4 or 8, so that's interesting enough. You can also configure your system. You can shut the announcer off and the chatter off, which is kind of nice. There's also a DualShock option if you want it. You can create leagues, which is nice. So there's a variety here, as I've said, and I know I've said it like a few times now, but that is probably the best part of this experience, is the customization. I really can't do this justice just by opening it up and showing you. This is a game that if you check out videos of the game on YouTube, you kind of get a better understanding as to what it's like. I will grant the fact that it is a softball experience. You do have to keep in mind that in 2000 for the PlayStation, the system is 5 years old. We're getting ready to jump into the 6th generation of consoles at this point, so you weren't really going to squeeze a lot more out of the PlayStation. And if we're calling things fairly, 3DO really didn't have a great handle on PlayStation game design, at least in terms of visuals. The visuals for 3DO games were often pretty weak. Even for the High Heat series, if you played those games and you notice what the presentation looks like, it is kind of rough around the edges. 3DO did a better job with the PlayStation 2 and baseball games, most notably the High Heat baseball series, and we'll actually be opening one of those High Heat games for the PlayStation 2 in a few weeks as we get ready for baseball season. But 3DO on the PlayStation was a little bit of a struggle, as it was for other developers and other publishers who were learning the ins and outs of the hardware and transitioning from more of a 2D environment to a fully 3D environment. Do I recommend picking up Sammy Sosa Softball Slam? If you like bad games, sure. I am one of those suckers who likes to play bad games every once in a while just to prove to himself that maybe it's not as bad as it seems. Also, if you like softball games, there aren't too many out there, so between that and Dusty Diamond's All-Star Softball, and oh, by the way, Dusty Diamond for NES is pretty expensive, so this is easily the less expensive game. May not be as fun and may lag a little bit in the gameplay department, but it might be worth a look if you can find it in the wild for cheap. As always, thanks for watching this episode of Unsealed, and until the next time, my friends, take care of yourselves and each other. See you soon.